The SV is widely regarded as being the best iteration of the Murcielago in general, packing that legendary 6.5-liter V12 engine, making, as the name suggests, 670 horsepower. It has a top speed of 209 miles an hour listed in the game, but its real-life top speed is somewhere closer to 212 miles an hour. So how does this car compare to the other cars in the tier? On paper, it does seem to be a superior car. It does have a comparatively higher top speed than a lot of the other cars in the tier, and the acceleration also seems to be on par with the Zonda Cinque. But it is also not the only Lamborghini in the tier. So comparing it to not only the Diablo, which is in the same tier as it, but also its younger cousin, the LP640, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. On paper, like I said, the Murcielago SV has that higher acceleration and top speed compared to the Diablo and the LP640. But the handling prowess, although good, it doesn't seem to want to drift too terribly often. Now with that being said, once you do get it sideways, it does have very good control and you can maintain the drift for as long as you really need to. So long as the drift isn't too sharp. I say this because even though it can take sharper turns, you really need to know how to apply the e-brake and control your speed, or else it will most certainly hit a wall, and that's where it loses a lot of its speed. Now with that being said, it is a very good car overall. The top speed with the turbo is somewhere north of around 236 miles an hour, which is definitely, I think, on the higher end, especially when compared to the other cars and the exotic tier. I think the reasoning for its drifting physics is because the Murcielago as a base is a heavier car than its competitors. The SV is meant to be a lighter variant of the Murcielago, and it does definitely feel better than the LP640, but I still think the added weight from it just being a heavy car in general, you can definitely feel it, especially in the corners when you're trying to drift. It also has the added aerodynamics from the SV package, being that front splitter and the rear wing, which definitely helps it make it feel more glued to the road, and I think that also is affecting its drifting physics. So with all that being said, I don't think that it's a bad car at all. In fact, I would argue that it's one of the better cars in the tier as a whole because of the attributes that I mentioned before. Although I won't say that it's the absolute best, because I think that honor goes to the Viper, it's still respectable in its own right, and I think this car flies under a lot of people's radars. I think this car is overshadowed by the Sesto Elemento, but I think those two cars are very different in their own right, and this car stands out as something that you can use in more open roads, while the Sesto Elemento is more geared towards more technical tracks. That actually brings me to my next point on why I think this car is set apart from not only the Lamborghinis in the tier, but also from the tier as a whole. And that point is pursuits. Because I think this car is honestly a lot better off in pursuits than its competition. The LP640 has the weight to make it good in pursuits, but it feels a bit too heavy for its own good. The SV fixes that problem and turns it into a benefit that allows it to deal extra damage to cops and racers that are in your way. So overall, the Murcielago SV is a respectable car in its own right, and it's a car that a lot of people should take into consideration when choosing a car for not only hot pursuits and races, but also something in consideration for online play. Because I think that this car flies under a lot of people's radars just because it's not what is mainstream. Now moving on to the cop side of things, and this is where things get a bit more interesting. First, I want to bring up its transmission because it's strange. So the Murcielago comes with 6 speeds as standard. However, since Need for Speed likes to take into consideration the higher speeds that every car can go, for the majority of them, they added an extra gear. With 7 speeds on a Murcielago SV, especially on the cop version, it's a bit odd because the speed limited by nitrous is around 225. Now the cruising speed without nitrous for the cop version of the SV is around 230, It's still a bit of an odd choice considering that it only has about 5 miles an hour to play around with, so I would say that it's interesting how they opted for 7th gear instead of just leaving it with 6 and letting that run just a little bit more. Anyways, enough trivia. Onto the actual cop car itself. Remember when I said about the racer version that the weight makes it feel a bit heavier to drift? Well, that kind of applies to the cop car, but unfortunately I want to say it applies more so here. Why that's the case, I'm honestly not 100% sure, but it still does stand though that it is a respectable cop car in its own right. Once again, it is a bit outclassed by the Viper, and also once again, it is a bit overshadowed by the Sesto Elemento, but just like with the racer version, it still finds a nice niche of being able to ram suspects without sacrificing the speed and acceleration that cop cars are known for. For that reason, I think this is a very solid choice for hot pursuits and interceptors, just because it's able to maintain its status as a good, accelerating, and strong hitting vehicle that can quickly bring an end to hot pursuits and interceptors. Now with that being said, I would say that its weakest point is probably rapid responses, just because the heavier weight does bring a bit of a hindrance to its steering ability, and for that reason I don't think it's quite as suitable for those events. Now there are some rapid responses that do take advantage of the SV's capabilities, but I would say that those are a bit too niche for its own good, and it's only about 2 events I would say that would really be useful for it. So for that reason, for rapid responses, in terms of Lamborghini rivals, I would say that the Diablo fares a little bit better with those just because of the lower weight, and that's saying a lot because I still think the SV is still a very capable car when it comes to rapid responses. So overall, the Murcielago SV Interceptor can absolutely be a weapon when used in the right situation, but it has to be those right situations to be truly useful. In terms of acceleration and speed, it is a very capable machine. In fact, I would say it's one of the best cars in the speed enforcement unit for that purpose. But like I said, in terms of handling with it being heavier, it does make it a bit harder to set good times, especially in rapid responses or even interceptors if you require those to be faster for good times. I forgot to touch on it when I was talking about the racer car, but the availability of the SV comes a little bit later than I would like for an exotic tier car, because by the time you would unlock it, you would already have a lot of the other cars in the tier that I think would be just as capable at different events than this car would be. But once you do unlock it, you'll see that it's such a well-rounded car, and it's really hard to dislike it when it's so capable at pretty much anything you throw at it. I would say that was what makes the Murcielago SV such a likable car overall, not only in this game, but in real life as well, because that versatility just makes it so unique, and it makes it stand out from the rest of the speed enforcement unit for that reason alone. And because of that, I would say the overall rating for the SV as a car as a whole is a really solid 8 out of 10, making it one of the better cars in the tier overall.